I asked Roger once, I don't know, 5-10 years later, I said, why me? And he said, because you showed up. And that always stuck with me, which is that I showed up eager every day and loving what I was doing, because attitude has so much to do, I think, in our business.
Right.
That people want to be around people who are positive and love what they're doing.
Yeah, as an organization, Black Theater United, make sure that there's diversity across all fields in our industry. Some are easier to break into than others, and so this designers initiative is important to us because we not only want to show what the work is, what the passion is, what the joy is, what the expertise is, in case that sparks something in a young person, and then offer the opportunities and the access and the pipelines. Hi everybody, Michael McElroy here. I'm a founding member of Black Theater United. Welcome to Before the Curtain Rises, the Designer Series. I am here with 8-time Tony Award-winning lighting designer, 19 nominations, including 2 this year for Hell's Kitchen and The Grey House, the fantastic Natasha Katz. Welcome, Natasha Katz.
Thank you, Michael.
So thank you so much for taking this time. I know you're busy, especially as we are in Tony season and you have these 2 nominations for Hell's Kitchen and The Grey House. But this initiative is really important to Black Theater United, and we were so excited to know that there was support from all the designers that we spoke to about making sure that there are pipelines into all the different fields within the design industry for theater. So it's important for, I think, young artists to know that there's a place for them, right? And part of our introducing young artists to the incredible work that you and many other designers do in theater is to just talk about what you do, your journey. So where were you born and raised?
I was born right here in Manhattan. Yeah,
right.
And raised here.
Okay.
And I've really lived here my whole life.
Yeah. So when did this interest in lighting design or in the arts really begin?
My parents did take me to the theater a lot when I was a kid. I mean, mostly my mother took me. I have a brother who wasn't interested in it at all, so there was something, you know, that really appealed to me about it. And so I had a lot of exposure being in New York City and went to the theater. And then I don't know, sometime my teens or something, I knew that I wanted to work in the theater. I didn't do it in high school because I found it very kind of elitist and cliquey, the high school that I was in the theater department. So I never did anything with it. It was kind of, in a way, like my own special secret that I believed, oh, maybe sometime in my life this will happen for me. And what this was, I had no idea. I didn't even know there was such a thing as a lighting designer when I was in high school. I knew that I didn't want to perform. I did know that. I took one acting class at the YMCA, and I thought, this is not for me. I can't be a snowflake. It is not happening. So then I ended up at Oberlin College, which is in Ohio, a little small town, which they had an arts department there, but I really went for a liberal arts education. I was sort of a wayward soul, just trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And they had something called the inter-arts department, which really sort of molded me in this sense of inter-arts, of the dance, theater, music. Also, Oberlin had a music conservatory. Yes. They still do. Of it melding together. So I came from a kind of, like, my background from that school was that we were all there to collaborate together, all the different arts. But again, like I knew nothing about lighting, and I took a course in lighting. I didn't do well. I didn't really understand it. It's so ethereal. I think that for many people, it's very difficult to understand. And then I ended up working in the theater itself, and I worked every job possible because I found my love, but still like not about lighting. And I think in many ways, speaking to a younger crowd and trying to find a way into this business, that it's okay not to know, but that it also, there are so many opportunities. So what happened with me, and this is just me and my background, is I worked the fly rail. I know to some people that won't mean anything. I was a stage manager. I ended up working in the scenic shop. I learned how to build scenery. I learned how to use a buzzsaw or whatever the heck it was called. And then I learned a little bit about lighting, and I tried to do some lighting, and I don't know if it was good or not, in a little black box theater. And then what happened at Oberlin was they had a program called the Great Lakes College Association, and you could get a full semester credit to work with somebody. It could have been in anything. It could have been in neuroscience. It could have been in anything. And so I wanted to work in theater, and they hooked me up with a lighting designer named Roger Morgan.
That's the name on my list.
All right. Well, he's very important in my life.
Yeah.
But again, like I didn't know anything about lighting. I just wanted to find one way to sort of find out about the business, and it just happened. So it was a fellowship, you might call it today, or I guess people still call it an internship, and it was a show called I Remember Mama. It was Richard Rodgers' last musical. It was at the Majestic Theater, which is right across the street. And it was during that particular semester was when the show went out of town to Philadelphia and also came to New York City. So I just happened to luck out timing-wise to watch the entire process. And then I ended up liking lighting because I learned so much about it, and I learned how much of a sort of a collaborative field it was, because in many ways lighting has to bring in sort of embrace the other elements. It has to make scenery look good. It has to make actors look fabulous. Right. That's like job number one. It interacts with music. As you know, if you watch a rock concert, you see it change on the key change in the music. So we do that as lighting designers. And also, there's this camaraderie in the world of the theater, and there's a huge camaraderie in the world of lighting design, because you can't do it alone. Somebody else has to go up on a ladder and hang the lights. Somebody's got to run the cable. So there's a whole group of people that you're working with all the time. And I found that through working with Roger, and he took me to every meeting, so all of that was really good. And then just one other thing, sort of on the subject of younger people and what lighting can, and my background, and then I'm sure you're going to ask me some other questions, is that I didn't go back to Oberlin. Because people started asking me to work with them. So I worked with other designers, and essentially it's from on-the-job training for me. There were some courses that I took in New York because there was a school here that kind of had a la carte classes, but I didn't finish college, although I do have a doctorate now from Oberlin College. Thank you, Oberlin. And I didn't go to graduate school. So there you go, Michael.
Well, no, I think what's great about what you're saying is that there's not just one path. And I think in this day and age, we live in a time where you're supposed to know. You're supposed to have the answers to everything. And what I love about your story is you didn't know that this was the thing that was going to be your passion, your career, but you followed where there was opportunity. Well, let me go see what's happening over here.
That's right.
Right? And through that exploration, you were able to find the thing, and that people were put in your path that helped you once you discovered that to kind of help you along to the next part of your journey?
Absolutely. And I think one of the things that helped me in a funny way is that I didn't have this aching dream for something. So that any opportunity that came up, my aching dream was to work in the theater. That's all I cared about. So this Tony Awards, it never even occurred to me. I don't think Tony Awards even entered into any kind of dreamscape for me, maybe until my 30s, probably, something like that. So I took so many different paths in order to be whatever I am today, but all that stuff informs it. I worked in architectural lighting. I worked in the subscription department at Circle in the Square Theater. There's so many other things along the way.
Yeah. It's interesting
Because you have to make money.
Yeah, but it's interesting. I find we're two ends of the spectrum. Like from the time I was little, I knew this was what I wanted to do. Right?
And what was this to you?
When I was 8 years old, my elementary school, they took us downtown, and Cleveland has all these wonderful theaters. And the first show I was taken down there when I was 8 years old to see happened to be Porgy and Bess. And to see those Black people on stage doing that thing I went, that's it. And I didn't know how I was going to get there, but I knew that that was the thing that I wanted. How it was going to unfold, I didn't know, but I knew that that was what I wanted to be a part of. And then just life evolved in the way that it did. Getting involved in theater and music at school, and then going to Carnegie Mellon, all those things. So I think it's important just because there isn't one road, right? And I think today we sometimes get stuck in this space of, in order to do X, it has to be this way. And so the two of us sitting here just shows there are many different roads, right? Go out there and try things, and in the trying of, fully trying, not kind of sort of, but really immersing yourself, the thing that you love may just start to emerge. Right? So I think that that's important for specifically young Black artists who may not know lighting designing is even a thing, let alone a thing for them, right? That you didn't go to some lighting school in high school and then go to the, you know what I mean? That there's many different avenues. Talk a little bit about Roger Morgan and that relationship and that mentorship and what that meant to you.
I wouldn't be sitting here today without Roger. He also had an assistant named Marsha Madera who was extremely helpful to me too. But I definitely would not be sitting here without Roger. He took me to every meeting that he had. He was a theater consultant, so any kind of new theaters that would come up, he would do the drawings about where the lighting positions were and dressing rooms and really architectural work. So that was also very interesting to me. So he took me to those meetings also in that period of time. So every single meeting he went to, every single phone call that he was on, Roger invited me to that. So the access that I had was incredibly important. And then that trickled down because he showed a kind of faith in me. Everybody below him in the hierarchy also did the same.
And so it's really important, mentorship and having access and having those pipelines is important, right? Because when people think about some of the fields that we have in our theater industry, you can have that skill set, but understanding the culture and the world, that's something you really gain from being immersed in it and having people who kind of guide you and say, Roger Morgan had a lot of faith in you to say, not only am I going to teach you about this one thing, but I'm actually going to bring you in so that you're getting a holistic understanding of what this world is.
That's absolutely true. I asked Roger once, I don't know, 5-10 years later, I said, why me? And he said, because you showed up. And that always stuck with me, which is that I showed up eager every day and sort of, I guess, loving what I was doing, because attitude has so much to do, I think, in our business, that people want to be around people who are positive and love what they're doing.
And I think another way of saying that also is you were curious.
Yes.
Right? You showed up
perfect
open
word.
and curious.
Yes.
Right? and that being open and available is essential today, so that you walk into a space with that curiosity and openness to say, I'm here to learn, teach me,
Yes.
right? That's a great space to be in. I think we're part of a culture today where we're supposed to know everything.
Nope.
And I think it's like the journey of learning and the joy of learning needs to be kind of put back at the center of things.
Yeah, I agree. I have 2 kids myself, and I think they, very often, because of whatever is going on in the culture today, feel like even if it's being a barista, that they should know how to be a barista before they're a barista. But I keep telling them that they're going to train you to be a barista. So there's something that floats around now that makes people think like they have to know what the youth. This is such an umbrella statement I'm making, and I don't mean to. I don't mean it's about every single person, but that you actually don't have to know. There are training grounds.
Right. And people want to work with people who are hungry, who have that curiosity.
Yeah. I didn't feel like I was a lighting designer until it was years later. I loved what I did, and I loved every step along the way. But maybe it's because of my background, because I came from it from such a sort of on-the-job training way. I think that for me, it's only been in the last couple of years that I've been able to admit that I didn't go back to Oberlin, because there's, whether there's a stigma attached to that or not, I felt like there would have been. I didn't want anybody to think I hadn't graduated college, but that was my choice. And I had I had work, and I had the support of my parents. I did have financial support from my parents because I lived in New York. I lived with them probably until I was 24 or something like that, maybe a little younger. But then I started to make enough money to get my own apartment pretty quickly because of it.
From Roger Morgan to the opportunities that started to unfold after that, when was the moment when you went, I'm a lighting designer?
I did not say to myself, I'm a lighting designer, until at least 10 years after that.
Okay.
I never really believed it. And I think it was because other people took the same path that I did at that time. I think that's harder now to take that path. I think that people do expect that when I say people, I think that and it happens to me. I see myself looking at a resume and I wonder, what school did they go to? Who are they being recommended by?
Right.
I try to push that away because of my own background, but because of the way I went through all of that, I don't think I said I'm a lighting designer until I was at least 30. Wow. Sometimes I can't even believe it today.
Well, I think, not that this is it is, in a way, 19 Tony nominations, 8 Tony Award wins, if we call them wins, or Tony Awards, leave it there. Somebody thinks you're doing a great job.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've seen you in the room. I know you work.
Thank you.
So if nobody else matters, I matter. I think you're phenomenal.
Thank you, Michael. I think that part of me is what spurs me on. I think that it's a positive in many ways. Yes. That kind of self-deprecating feeling about myself, about some of those issues, is a way that keeps me moving forward. So I would say it's something that's a strength, ultimately, that may sound not like a strength, but a strength, if that makes any sense.
It makes total sense. I have the same thing coming up at the time when I came up, where I carried a lot of the trauma from artistic training programs of that time.
Yeah, well, there you go.
And it wasn't until 2004 that I finally, what it did was the same thing for me. That may be the case, but I'm going to work harder, right? I'm going to keep working. And then finally in 2004, I was like, this is not serving you. Stop that not believing and working because you don't believe, and now just work because you know you can do the work.
There it is. There it is. That's a perfect way to put it.
Yeah.
Yeah, there it is.
So what are some examples of opportunities when you've had the ability to give back?
In a way, the same opportunity that I had. There are fellowship programs out there. So I just recently had a fellow who was paid for by the fellowship program, and she worked with me on Suffs down at the Public Theater, and I'm the lighting designer for MJ at the Neil Simon Theater. So Amina, she had done work as a lighting designer. I mean, she designed, she went to school for it, but there's so much, more to learn. I feel the same way about myself right now. There's always more to learn. So Amina shadowed me, essentially very similar to what I just described about the experience with Roger. She could come to any meeting, anything that was going on, Amina was there. And so this was through a fellowship program. Then fast forward to 2 years later, and I am the lighting designer for Hell's Kitchen, as you mentioned, which started down at the Public Theater. So I asked Amina if she wanted to be the assistant. And then the show moved to Broadway. So Amina is the assistant lighting designer on Broadway. So she's gone from fellowship to working on Broadway.
That's fantastic. Once again, it's about having access in those pipelines. And also the shift that has happened in our industry where one of the things that Black Theater United was working or partnering with the industry on is the New Deal, which is this document that says, coming out of the shutdown, how are we going to move forward to create a more equitable industry? And one of the things that we talked about was that all internships have to be paid. Because when an internship is not paid, you have to be able to afford to be able to do it.
Absolutely.
And so one of the things that everyone who signed on as a signatory agreed that there would be only paid internships. And I think that that really is contributing to making sure there's more diversity
Absolutely.
among young artists coming up today.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Diversity is so important to me,
Yes.
And, I guess I can do it, only from my own personal point of view, but when I was a kid, when I was in elementary school, when I went to the bookshelves for biographies, there was just one on a girl, and it was Marie Curie. I know more about male baseball players than I ever want to know. So there you go. We have got to diversify this field.
I was going to ask you about this. I was curious because, people talk all the time. There's this expression, you have to see it in order to be it, right? So for me, 8-year-old Michael, seeing those Black artists on stage in Porgy Best, even though I may have thought I wanted to do it, seeing people who looked like me was the real kind of solidifying factor, right? I don't know of this dearth of female lighting designers that during when you were coming up. Who were the people that you were looking for that let you know that it was possible?
Well, it's interesting in lighting because the period that I came up in, there were a lot of female lighting designers.
That's fantastic. Who?
There was Peggy Clark, who when Peggy Clark started, so she goes back way before my time, but she was there just as I came in. She wasn't allowed to stand on the stage. She had to do her lighting work standing in the seats in the orchestra because women weren't allowed on the stage. Same with, there's another one, Jean Rosenthal, also before my time, but many people consider her the mother of lighting design, and she spawned a number of women lighting designers. So there was Peggy Clark, Pat Collins, Jennifer Tipton, Arden Fingerhut, who died of breast cancer at a really young age. It's just awful. She taught me actually for a little bit. There was Ruth Roberts. There was Marcia Madera. She designed Nine. She designed My One and Only. So there were a lot of women. So there was, oh my God, Beverly Emmons. There were a lot of role models for me. Nobody who had kids, but role models, because I ended up having kids, which that's also changed. A lot of designers have children now. But then it seems what happened is that men took the field over. And there seem to be two thoughts on it. One is that it paid more. Once it started to pay well, men got into the field. Or that because of the technology, it felt like, that's a male field. It's swinging back now. There are a lot more women coming into lighting, which is great. And originally, the reason why there were so many women lighting designers was that we were the emotional component of the theater rather than, and costumes is women's work, but set is male work. And so all of that, as this is this is 30 years ago. But today, I think all of that is changing a lot.
Well, this is great to hear because, once again, knowing the history, right? And for me, to make that assumption, but really, you were seeing yourself reflected.
I absolutely was. I absolutely was. And I think what happened in the interim period is that many women weren't. So they, like, stayed out of lighting. And now it's changing. And there's Shirley Prendergast. Do you know that name? She was a black female lighting designer. She just died about 5 years ago. I don't know exactly what her age would be, but she was before my time. So even, before me.
That's a great, and I was doing an interview today with Ben West about his new book on musical theater. And once again, not making assumptions, but going back, and he inserts African-American composers, librettists, lyricists, producers back into the history that we rarely get to see. Once again, knowing that that's there makes me go, okay, so there is a history that I'm involved in the evolution of this art form.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
So what inspires you now when you are looking at a show or an offer is sent your way? What are the things that you look for that inspire you to say yes to a job? Besides the financial, meaning
yeah, we do all have to put food on the table.
Exactly, which is reality.
Yeah, it is reality. I'm just thinking about that reality for sort of younger people. That's why exploring so many different things if you're not acting, there's so many, there are plenty of journeys to take as an actor also, but there's so many different roads to take to get to different places. I see people who start as stage managers and then become lighting designers and then become production managers and then go back to lighting design, not because they're unhappy in any of it, but because they are thrilled by all of it. There's just so many different places. Or I've worked in rock and roll, I've worked in dance, I've worked in events, meaning like Buick car show was my favorite, but so there, being a stagehand, there are many more. Everything hopefully is really beginning to diversify. The subject matter for sure, and the people that are working on the show. I would say that's the most important thing to me.
I would agree. And there's something else when you talk about lighting design that just comes to mind. You all also give us location, you give us time of day, you give us mood, as a lighting designer, right? Your work helps us to determine, season. It determines the time of day. It determines, the location and the environment and all this. So it's a really exciting in terms of the collaboration to help how you tell the story.
Well, yeah, we haven't talked about really what a lighting designer does. But
what does a lighting designer
well, you said it. Actually, you said 99% of it. But one thing I would say to young people who are interested in lighting is to notice light, because so many of us don't notice it. Look at the way. How do you? When you wake up in the morning and the shades are drawn, how do you feel versus when you wake up in the morning and the shades aren't drawn?
Right.
How do you feel when you feel that rain outside? How do you feel when, let's say, you don't even have much light in your apartment? How do you feel when you then go outside and you feel the light and the light is hitting the buildings? How do you feel at nighttime as you're going from that kind of the day into that kind of, what is that feeling for you of going into nighttime? What's happening as the sun is setting? What is that making you feel? And what are you seeing there also? Like, I'm looking at you and I can see that the light is just, catching your cheek and getting the side of your face, and it's doing a nice color on the purple shirt and all that. You look fabulous, by the way.
It's interesting that you say that, because one of my rituals in the morning is I always close the curtains at night, because for me the ritual is opening the curtains and seeing the light come in. And that is like a ritual to me. In every apartment I live in, I have to be able to open the curtains in the morning and allow the light in.
The most important thing to me as a lighting designer is to make the actor look good, and to make every actor look good, and to make every skin color look good.
Yes.
That is number one. And then actually comes mood and in a way what you just described is you just described a whole story. You just described a whole arc that has to do with lighting, which is that you describe. So in my head, I see you going to sleep and you're shutting out the day. And you do whatever you do to go to sleep, and then you sleep through the night, and the shades are drawn. And then what does Michael want in the morning? I want to embrace the day, and that I can see it in the film, I can see it in a show. When those curtains open up, this is Michael entering his next day. What that day brings, we don't know. So there it is. There's that. We don't know what your day is going to be. You're going to try to make it the best that it's going to be. So there's we just made a little story.
We sure did. See, that's what it's about, collaboration.
Yeah.
So there have been lots of changes in lighting design based on just the technology, right? But it seems like it's a very personal, emotional experience as well as a technical one, right? So when you design for a show, how does that make you feel?
I start designing a show absolutely from the emotional and not from the technical at all. Lighting, when the music leads you and the choreography is, the dance is happening, all these things are so visceral. And for me as a lighting designer, I think this is partly why I love it as much as I do. When you hear a key change or you hear a singer hit a high note, I personally like to mirror that with what the lighting is doing. So what does that mean? It means that it might get brighter, it might get more saturated. So it's almost like music scoring in a movie. The audience may not really notice it, but it tells the story better. It makes you feel something more. It's all so hard to describe, but when dancers are, I just to see the calf of a dancer or to see the arm lit and just the side of a face, because you want to see their bodies moving through space. Light can do all of that and shadow can do all of that. So in terms of how it makes me feel, I don't know how to put it otherwise than it gives me unbelievable joy when all these elements come together like that. It's an incredibly joyful profession.
We really want to, as an organization, Black Theater United, make sure that there's diversity across all fields in our industry. Some are easier to break into than others. And so this designers initiative is important to us because we not only want to show what the work is, what the passion is, what the joy is, what the expertise is, in case that sparks something in a young person, and then offer the opportunities and the access and the pipelines. But to you, as someone who has made a career doing this and loves what you do, why is it important, especially coming out of the shutdown, especially coming out of the lessons that we learned, during that time in our country? It seems so long ago, but really was only 2-3 years ago. And how our industry now is trying to evolve. Why is diversity important? Why is that important within our industry?
Here we are, we're an industry of storytellers, as we know, and so many stories have been silenced for so many years, and I've, woken up to that myself, and I think the only way to stop silencing those stories is to have full diversity in the storytelling business that we're in. There's no business more that needs it than we need it. So I think that's a huge part of it, and we have to really set everybody up for success so that we can change the entire dynamic of our business in terms of what stories are being told, so that somebody can see themselves.
Some young Michael at 8 years old can say, oh, I want to do that. Or I just want to be a part of that world. I feel a song coming on. But your perspective was, that world, I want to be a part of it. I don't know what I want to do in it, but I want to be curious and see what that world holds. And it led you to your passion, which is lighting design.
Also, selfishly, for me, the idea of diversity is only going to fulfill my personal life more too. That if I have people that are around me that come from cultures and look exactly, that's gonna fulfill me personally also, and have different points of view about the lighting, and might even say something to me that may make me think, oh, I should change the way this particular lighting looks.
Yeah. It actually affects evolution in, like, as an individual artist, but also the field, right? Having more diversity in the space means that there are more perspectives that are contributing, which may take us to places in the storytelling, in the evolution of our art form that we hadn't even dreamed of.
And well, that's exactly so well said, Michael. That's it's such an interesting question for me, because I've been asked that question before about what advice would I give myself. The advice I would actually give myself is just do it all the same way.
I say the same thing. I say, if I unravel one tiny thread, then I might not be here where I am right now. So every experience that I've had has contributed to who I am today.
Yeah.
And every crazy choice or what could be considered bad choice, still I learned something and has contributed to the artist, the human being that I am today. So I'm taking one piece of that out, you know.
I know what you said is also really important, which is you might not be there, I might not be here, but we'd be somewhere else.
Right.
That's, I hope, pretty damn good too.
Right.
Meaning that those mistakes, like you said, it's okay to make plenty of mistakes.
Right.
But I wouldn't go back and say to myself, don't make them again, as painful as they were. I wouldn't say don't do them.
Right. Well, thank you for taking this time. I know that you're busy, and I appreciate you being here and being a part of this Designers Initiative. I'm excited to see what it brings, and I'm excited to see what your part in it brings for some young artists who will get to hopefully be mentored by you.
I hope so too.
You know, so that some years from now, they'll be sitting here talking about, you were there, Roger Morgan, right?
Wow.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to where this is going to go.
Yeah, great. Me too. I feel the same way.
Thanks for joining us. And if you want to be a member of our community, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and click on the notification button so you get the up-to-date videos. And also don't forget to follow us on Instagram. Check out our website, www.blacktheaterunited.com, for all updates about what's going on at Black Theater United. All information will be there. You want to know what's going on. So check us out. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you next time.